Hello guys, this is Sharon here from 24/7 Techie, and in this video we are going to compare the Xiaomi Mi4c with the Xiaomi Redmi Note 2. So we'll start with the dimensions of these phones. We can see a major difference as the Redmi Note 2 is a 5.5-inch form factor device compared to the Mi4c, which is a 5-inch form factor device. If we leave the basic difference, there's also difference in the thickness of the phones. So the Mi4c is 7.8 mm thick, whereas the Redmi Note 2 is 8.19 mm thick. So there's a little bit of difference, but there's a lot of difference in the weight. So the Redmi Note 2 is about 160 grams compared to Mi4c, which is 130 grams. And when we talk about the connectivity of both the phones are dual SIM and support 4G in India. And when we come to the screen quality, so the Mi4c is a 5-inch Full HD screen, whereas the Redmi Note 2 is a 5.5-inch Full HD screen. Both the displays are IPS grade screens. The pixel density on the Mi4c is about 441 compared to Redmi Note 2 for a 401. On both the phones, the display used is really good, and you can't really find any big differences when you're using either one of these devices. And I've compared the Redmi Note 2 with a lot of other devices as well, and I've found out that the display use is actually good. So both the devices are at least protected by Gorilla Glass 3. There is no official confirmation as these devices are only available in Chinese website, so there's no clear confirmation on what protection it is, but there is some sort of protection because I've been using these devices for quite a long time and I don't have any scratches on the phone. So when we talk about the internal memory of both the phones, so both the phones are available in two storage capacities, 16 gigs and 32 gigs. Whereas the 16 gigs model on the Mi4c comes with only 2 gigs of RAM, and the 32 gigs come with 3 gigs of RAM. But on the Redmi Note 2 there is a little bit of difference in the 16 gigs and 32 gigs. The 16 gigs model come with Helio X10 processor clocked at 2.0 GHz, whereas the 32 gigs model comes with the Helio X10 processor clocked at 2.2 GHz. The Redmi Note 2 does have a plus point over the Mi4c is that it supports micro SD cards. I have a 32 gigs SD card inside this and it's working perfectly fine, and it supports up to 128 I guess, because I've tried out with the 64 and it was working. So when we talk about the RAM of these devices, the Mi4c is powered by a 2 gigs RAM or the 3 gigs RAM on depending on the capacity of storage you go for. But over here we have the 3 gigs RAM model compared to Redmi Note 2, which only comes in 2 gigs of RAM. And the RAM management on both the phones after the MIUI 7 update has been really good. So on Mi4c it's about 1.6 gigs of RAM is available, which means more than 50% of the RAM is available, whereas on the Redmi Note 2 out of 2 gigs about 1 gigs of RAM is free, which is also 50%. 50% of the RAM available is actually good enough. So the Mi4c comes with a USB Type-C port, whereas the Redmi Note 2 comes with a micro USB 2.0 port. So when we talk about the cameras of these phones, so the back camera and the front camera are pretty much similar. Both the phones have a 13 megapixel back camera, but I've noticed that the Mi4c does shoots a little bit better photos compared to Redmi Note 2, and the detailing in the Redmi Note 2 on some aspects is a little bit better, but the clarity on the Mi4c is a little better. So the cameras are pretty much similar, and it's also same thing in the front cameras as well. So as we can see it, that the front camera on both the phones are pretty good and does perform well. So in the camera point of view there is not a very big difference. So when we are talking about the cameras, I do also need to tell you that the LED flash on both the phones are a little bit different. So the Mi4c comes with a dual LED flash, whereas the Redmi Note 2 comes with only a single LED flash. And while we are seeing the phone like this, we can also see that the design resemblance. So these two phones are quite similar in the design. As we can see it, pretty much it is quite similar. So both the phones come with infrared ports, pretty much similar design language. But the Redmi Note 2 does have a removable battery with a micro SD card slot, and can be opened like this, but in the Mi4c there is no chances of opening it. So now we will be talking about the software experience on both the phones. So both the phones are running on Xiaomi's latest UI, the MIUI 7, but there's a little bit of difference, as the Android version on Mi4c is 5.1.1 compared to Redmi Note, where it is still 5.0.2. And I was really surprised to see this, because Redmi Note 2 was launched only a couple of months ago, or we can take it as 3 months ago, and still is running on Android 5.0.2. But we cannot really complain to Xiaomi about a phone running on Android 5.0.2, as the Xiaomi's flagship, the Mi 4 is still running on Android KitKat, so we can't really complain regarding that to Xiaomi. But if we leave the numbers on these phones, like the 5.0.2 and the 5.1.1, everything else is similar on both the phones. The endless customization, the security, and the robust theme engine that the Xiaomi has. So both the phones have the identical software. There's only the number difference of the 5.0 and the 5.1. Everything else is same. I guess that's why Xiaomi doesn't really update the Android version and updates the MIUI version, because they keep the software experience same on each and everything. So now we will talk about the CPUs on the phones, which is the biggest difference. The biggest difference because before this year we thought that the Snapdragon was unbeatable and MediaTek had no chance against Snapdragon, and with the failure of Snapdragon 810 and 615, MediaTek has shown that it is a little bit trustworthy company and a nice chip maker. So I guess that's why some companies have went with MediaTek processors, and especially the MediaTek Helio X10 processor. So this is sort of the high-end processor from MediaTek, which wants to compete with Snapdragon 810 or at least 808, I guess. So we have the 808 over here with the Mi4c, and the Helio X10 in the Redmi Note 2. We can see that the Helio X10 is an octa-core processor, whereas the Snapdragon 808 is an hexa-core processor. Both the processors are really good, and when we are in the CPU there, we will also have a look at the sensors. So we can see that the Mi4c does have a lot of sensors compared to Redmi Note 2, which only has 8 or 9 sensors. This may look like a really big difference, but I've noticed that these sensors are the sensors that are really necessary. I've had no problem with using this phone without this big of a list of sensors. It isn't really a very big difference. We are in the Enter2 benchmark app, and we will be running this benchmark, but I need to show you something, that the Redmi Note 2 is running on performance, and there is no option of performance in the Mi4c. I've tried out everything, but there is no performance mode, and it is performing very well without the performance mode. So we'll be testing out the phones like this, and I will be back after the benchmark is finished. So as the benchmarks are finished, and we can see that the Mi4c scored about 40,000 and the Redmi Note 2 scored about 44,000. But I can tell you that the Mi4c's 808 is fluctuating a lot in the benchmark scores. But I can surely tell you that the Redmi Note 2 is a little bit more stable and scores about 40, 43,000, 44,000 on a regular basis. So in the performance point of view, none of the phone disappoints. Both the phones run pretty smooth and pretty well. So there's a new feature that Xiaomi has brought in, that is the side edge feature. So if we double tap on the side of the phone, it will go back, and when we are in the camera app and single click it will take a photo. The feature is working perfectly fine. So when we talk about the battery life of both the phones, so the Mi4c brings in a 3080 mAh battery, whereas the Redmi Note 2 with the bigger size and a thicker body still brings a smaller battery, the 3060 mAh battery. But there is not a lot of difference in the battery life of both the phones. Both the phones last you about 4 hours of screen on time with moderate to heavy usage, and can easily last you a day. And if I am given a personal choice, I will be going for the Redmi Note 2 First of all, because of the price point. Second of all, the Helio X10 processor. Third of all, the 5.5 inch form factor, because I'm a very big fan of 5.5 inch. Yes, I have started to like the 5 inch form factor, but when you are gaming or watching videos or anything, you really do like the 5.5 inch form factor. And you may find it silly, but I really do like the red colored backlit keys. So the moment I got the Redmi Note 2, so I was really impressed with the backlit red colored buttons. And this may be a silly point or not really relevant for you guys, but I'm sharing my personal choice. So thank you guys for watching this video. This was Sharun here from 24/7 Techie, showing you guys the Mi4c versus the Redmi Note 2. And in conclusion, the Redmi Note 2 is a very good competition to the Mi4c, and with the Mi4c of such a competitive price, the Redmi Note 2 is a little bit better with that price point. And please do subscribe to our channel, because we really need subscribers. You can help us a lot through that red subscription button, and I really wish to see you in my next video. Till then, see ya.